Well, shalom, shalom, scattered Israel. I am Rebekah and Ali from Teshuvah Ministries, and today we are going to talk about the Feast of First Fruits. This is the basics teaching on this feast. And yes, today I am in a hat, and I will explain a little bit more later, but basically this is a symbolic of something my heart dreams of, and symbolic of hope, actually. Symbolic of lots of sun and sand and tropical blue water. So something that I dream about, something that I have hope for. I think that this is becoming one of my favorite feasts, actually. And yes, I know that they all kind of work hand in hand, so you can't have one without the other, of course. But this one is rapidly becoming my favorite feast because outside of Yom Teruah, of course, because Yom Teruah is all about the king returning, right? And so first fruits wouldn't actually mean anything if we didn't have Yom Teruah. So, but I can't wait to explore first fruits with you today. And so get something to drink and get a piece of paper, and we're going to go through a lot of things here. I want you to write some things down so that your heart remembers what this feast is about. This feast is very misunderstood. I think this feast is super neglected among believers, and yet I feel like it has so much to it that believers actually need, especially as we are looking at what is going on in the world around us right now. I mean, this right now when I'm filming this is the spring feast of 6020. So this is April 2020, and if you know anything about what's going on right now in the world, this feast will help your heart find hope. Yes, because this is what this feast is all about. This feast reveals hope. Okay, I am going to unpack this for you. I'm so excited to do this for you today, and I hope you track with me. It's going to be a little bit of a long teaching. I am prepared. I have my water. I've got color-coded dry erase markers, and I may take this hat off at one point. So in the Feast of First Fruits, we actually see the point of the entire story. We see the point of all the obedience. We see the point of and the climax of what is actually the reason for all these feasts and festivals of Yehovah. We see it being the reason for him asking us to obey. And it revolves all around hope. So as you know, in 1 Corinthians, it says these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. And if you see that, you see hope in the center there, gluing all three of them together, actually. It is super hard to have faith, which requires a ton of endurance, because faith meaning faithfulness, as in you're going to be faithful to the covenant and do the covenant till you drop. It's really hard to do that without hope, without knowing why you're doing what you're doing, right? And it's really hard to love without hope. It is, it's pointless if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. Doing hard, it requires you understanding what the reward is and why you're doing it. So like my husband likes to quote, breath is for the soul like air is for the body. And I don't know whose quote that actually is, but it's so true. If you don't have hope, why keep going? Why keep putting one foot in front of the other? If you don't know what the reward is at the end, then you have nothing. Hope is everything. And like King Solomon says, hope that's unrealized, or unrealized hope where it never seems to come true, is super hard on your psyche, super hard on your body and your health. But the wonderful thing about the Feast of First Fruits is we actually see hope realized, and I'm going to walk you through that. This teaching is going to bring you a ton of hope, and I think it's going to be super good for your heart and your mind. And it's going to help you know what you're working for. It will help you endure until the end, as things kind of get bumpy at the end here. So I think this is going to bless you. Now again, I am recording this for myself and for my family so that we can remember what we have learned about first fruits, and next year build on it and enter it again and remember, oh yeah, yay, okay, we know what first fruits is about, and we know what Papa wants to talk to us about at this time of year. So you're getting to kind of peer into my recording of what I know. Okay, so first we're going to look at the Torah command for first fruits and see what Papa asked us to do for it. We're going to look at the temple services and then see how Yeshua fulfilled this feast. Then we're going to look at the hope embedded in this feast, and then we're going to discuss the fruit, first fruits, like fruit of our lips, and what the scriptures talks about when in reference to fruit. We're going to look at how to do some of the things that Papa asked us to do, as well as I got some ideas for you on how you can celebrate this festival in a way that's going to honor the Messiah and bring your family into this. And then one of the biggest things we're going to talk about today is who are the 144,000. So stay tuned and don't turn it off yet, because I think you're going to be so surprised. Oh yes, and then we're going to talk about one other thing, how you start the counting, how you do the counting between first fruits and Shavuot. So we kick off first fruits with a certain counting, two of them actually, like two witnesses in order to find the next feast, which is Shavuot. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and read the command here in Leviticus 23, 4 to 14. It says, "And Yehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yehovah to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Sabbath. The priest shall wave it," and that's actually referring to first fruits. "And you shall offer that day when you wave the sheaf a lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto Yehovah. And the meat offering therefore shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, and an offering made by fire unto Yehovah for a sweet savor. And the drink offering therefore shall be of wine, the 4th part of a hin. And you shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that you have brought an offering unto your Elohim." So the idea being you can't eat of what you're going to wave in front of him until you wave it in front of him and then you're free to eat it. This shall be a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. Isn't that interesting? So just so you know, I am reading from my Spring Feast Handbook. I have a Spring Feast one and a Fall Feast one. Someday I'm going to have a Winter Festival one with Hanukkah and Purim in it, but right now this is a really good reference, a resource book for you. It has, like you've heard me say before, this has all kinds of wonderful things in it. It goes through Passover, unleavened bread. Actually, it goes through the Lord's Supper, or the last meal that Yeshua had with his disciples in the upper room, and then Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Ascension. Shavuot, which is actually the very last spring feast, has its own handbook. So, but this is a great resource for you to have in your library. Okay, so we're going to come back and we're going to look at this when we look at how to count to Shavuot. But for now, as you see, you're supposed to take a sheaf of the first fruit from the land, which would be barley, the wild barley, and wave it in front of Yehovah. Now, just so you remember, we find Aviv, the month of Aviv, by looking at the barley. And so Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, the very first day of the first month, which happened a couple weeks before this, you look to see if the barley is Aviv. If it's that's a stage in the ripening process of the barley, and if it is at the stage of Aviv, then you know a few weeks later you know that it's going to be ready to harvest on first fruits and then to begin eating of it, right? So you don't really want to eat Aviv barley. It's just a stage in the ripening process that it needs to be at so that a couple weeks later it's ready to go for this first fruit offering. Okay, so we're going to look at temple services to see what was actually in place and what was happening for first fruits, so that we can actually look at what Yeshua did and go, whoa, he totally fulfilled that. That's exactly what he did, only on, a super grander level. So I'm going to draw the first month on the board here, and we're going to place first fruits. We're going to really find where first fruits is in the lineup of spring feasts, and then we're going to look at temple services and how he fulfilled it. Okay. So this is the month of Aviv, the first month of Yehovah's year. So we're going to just go with the flow from this year as well as the flow from when Yeshua was here and did his Passion Week, because it actually follows the same pattern. This year is following the same pattern as it did back then. In all the time of us celebrating the feast, this has only happened twice, so this is super special when it follows the same pattern. And by that I mean that Rosh Hashanah falls on the same day, Passover falls on the same day of the week, and all the feasts are on the same day of the week. So it's a really powerful time to actually walk through the feasts in the same pattern as he did when he was here, and his final Passion Week there. So here we go. We're going to remember that Rosh Hashanah this year was on a Thursday. So Thursday was the first day of this month of Aviv. Now, a recap, if you need it, how you find the head of the year, because Rosh is head, Shana is year. You find that by first finding Aviv barley in the land of Israel, and then you look for the next new moon. And the new moon is on your right hand side, right here. It's going on this side. So it's not on this side, that's the crescent moon. The new moon is on this side, a little sliver of the new moon. And remember, the scriptures tells us to observe the new moon, so it doesn't mean dark moon. You cannot observe a dark moon. All right, so that is in, if you want to look at my Rosh Hashanah teaching, I will hopefully have it right here. Or here, one of the ways, and you can go watch that. It'll tell you all about how to find the head of the year. So we're going to put the first day right here on Thursday. That's when Rosh Hashanah was this year. All right, so let's start counting, because we know we have to count 14 days from Rosh Hashanah to find Passover. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's Passover on the 14th. This is on a Wednesday, okay? Definitely needed to be on a Wednesday in order to fulfill the 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, as he said. We'll get to that in a second. But so we have 14 here, and so let's just look here for a quick sec. If you want to go watch my upper room video teaching, or it's called the Last Supper teaching, it will tell you that it will show you how and why the Last Supper happened on the 13th and not the 14th. So the Last Supper was not Passover. It was actually happened in the upper room the night before Passover. Okay, so you can go watch that video, and I'll have that here or here, one of these places, so for you to go click on and to watch. And by the way, please subscribe if you like my channel, our ministry's channel, and definitely hit the bell so you can find out when something new comes along. All right, as everybody says these days, right? Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and write on the 13th. This is the Last Supper. Okay. Last Supper. And then we have the 14th was Passover. Pesach. Okay. So then after Pesach, what is the feast that comes next? That is the first high Shabbat of unleavened bread, right? So we're going to write down the first high Shabbat of unleavened bread. So this is unleavened bread, and this one is the first high Shabbat. Okay, and then that was on the 15th. Okay, so then how long does unleavened bread go? 7 days. 7 days. The first day and the last day are high Shabbats. And that means that it's an extra special Shabbat, and you better really, really, really pay attention to what he's asking you to do on that Shabbat. Okay, it's an appointment. It's a moedim, okay? Let's count this out. 15, 16, 17. I'm just going to put the date, the day of the month, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and so forth. So unleavened bread goes for 7 days. So let's go ahead and count this out. We have unleavened bread 1, 2, 3. So unleavened bread goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so on the 21st day, we have the last high Shabbat of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Oh, you know what? I was going to color code this. All right, so then we have to find first fruits, okay? Now we know that the resurrection happened, and by the way, without the resurrection, first fruits would never have happened. So the resurrection, super important. And also as a believer in Yeshua the Messiah, as somebody who is his Talmudim, his disciples, his followers, his royal priests, I think it's totally appropriate to celebrate and mark the things that he did, the things that he accomplished, right? So he resurrected actually on Shabbat, the night before first fruits. So he never resurrected on Sunday morning. He resurrected right before the end of Shabbat during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the weekly Shabbat. So let's go ahead and put this down. So this is let's look at here. We got unleavened bread right here, and the weekly Shabbat is right here because it's during unleavened bread. So the weekly Shabbat is right here. So remember that Yehovah makes it clear in the scriptures that a day is evening to evening. So a day starts at evening time. So I'm going to put a dotted line here to symbolize the end of Shabbat, and that Yeshua rose right at the end of Shabbat, right as it was getting into evening. Okay, so now let's find first fruits in this lineup. The scriptures tells us in Leviticus that the first fruits is actually the morrow after the Shabbat. And so when we understand how it's saying there in the flow and context of how it's describing all the spring feasts, we can know that it is the morrow, or the tomorrow, the next day after the Shabbat, the weekly Shabbat. All right, so we got the weekly Shabbat right here, and the day after that would be Sunday right here. So we're going to go ahead and put first fruits on that day. All right, so this day right here, is it also unleavened bread? Yes, so it's unleavened bread and first fruits on that day. All right, so something super important to remember is that first fruits is always on a Sunday. First fruits doesn't float around throughout the week. It's always on a Sunday. So it's never on a Wednesday, it's never on a Friday, it's never on a Shabbat. It is always on a Sunday, okay? It's settled and stays right there, okay? Okay, so let's look at how the temple services were actually operating here during this time when in reference to first fruits. Okay, so I'm just going to give an overview. I am no expert in all of the temple services, just so you know, but I know enough to be able to teach on the spring feast and to be able to find out how Yeshua fulfilled them, okay? So from what I know is that on Passover, later towards the evening time, the high priest would go out and with his entourage out into the barley fields, and they would gather barley into sheaves, but they wouldn't cut them from the ground. They would actually, they'd mark them. So they would go out into the field, and everybody was watching this. It was like a big deal. It's kind of like entertainment, I think. They would go out and they would mark these barley sheaves. So they would gather this and they would mark them, but they wouldn't cut them from the ground yet, okay? And then they would come back, and the high priest would actually put his own personal lamb into the oven at twilight. And then he would go into seclusion all the way until the day of first fruits. Okay, so he would be in seclusion for basically 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, so after the seclusion time of the high priest was over, he would come out, and him and his entourage would go back out into the barley fields again, and they would cut what they had previously on Passover marked. So they would cut those sheaves from the ground right here, right before sunset on this Shabbat. And then they would process the barley throughout the night, and so they would be ready for a first fruits harvest celebration, wave offering on first fruits. Let me go ahead and I'm going to draw the little barley sheaves. All right, my little barley sheaf that's still in the ground, and my little barley sheaf that's been cut from the ground, okay? And then they would process it, they would probably winnow it and do whatever, maybe they made bread, I don't know quite how they did that, but then they would wave that in front of Yehovah on first fruits, okay? Now, super amazing how Yeshua fulfilled. Let's look at how Yeshua fulfilled these temple services, okay? Okay, so backing up to the Last Supper, we know that evening he was betrayed at the Garden of Gethsemane by Judas, and throughout the course of the night he is questioned and goes through all the awful things that he went through that night into the early morning hour when the cock crows, and Simon Kepha denies him on the morning here of Passover around 6 o'clock in the morning. By 9 o'clock in the morning, we know that he was crucified, and then by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we know that he dies. There's an earthquake, the sky goes dark, the temple curtain between the holy and the most holy place rips in two. The earthquake actually allows for a crack, a fissure in the rock. Right below him, the soldier comes and spears him. The water and the blood flow out of him down that fissure in the crack, down that crack, and anoints the west side of the Ark of the Covenant that's actually right below him buried in Mount Moriah. So there's the witness. His blood now brought the new covenant that he was talking about the night before, or blood ratified the new covenant that he was talking about the night before with his disciples, which at the covenant confirming meal of the new contract. Super amazing. But here you see him taken down off the cross, off the stake, before sunset, because at sunset you have the high Shabbat of unleavened bread. So they wanted him down off of that cross before sunset. So he, right here at sunset, he is put into the oven. At the same time, he's put into the grave at the same time that the high priest is putting his own personal lamb into the oven. So interesting, because Yehovah calls Yeshua his lamb, right? So this is the lamb of Yehovah, and Yehovah is putting his lamb into the oven, into the grave, at the very same time as the high priest is putting his lamb into the oven at twilight here. Then you have the high priest is going into seclusion. So is Yeshua. Yeshua goes into seclusion here until Shabbat. At the end of Shabbat, same thing that the high priest did, remember? So Yeshua is in seclusion, as in the grave, throughout these days. Remember, as we talked about in the Passover basics block, it's 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth that he was, and he resurrects right here, right before sunset on Shabbat. Okay, another thing we need to cover that happened on Passover. Remember, before he puts his lamb in the oven, the high priest goes out into the field and gathers the sheaves, right? We've got sheaves standing here that he gathered with his entourage, and then he goes back and puts his lamb in the oven. Well, Yeshua, when he dies, right here before Shabbat, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a ton of graves that were opened, but the people weren't resurrected yet. They were marked, is what happened, is those graves were marked. So these people's graves were marked, all right, at his death, okay? And then he's put into the tomb, Yehovah puts his lamb into the oven, stays in seclusion here until the end of Shabbat. Now, what happened? The high priest came out of seclusion and then went into the barley fields and harvested those sheaves, right? So here we see at the end of Shabbat, Yeshua, there's a record in the scriptures that they were resurrected with him, those that he marked right here on Passover. So the graves that were marked on Passover, now the people came out of those graves right here when he resurrected. Okay, so the resurrection actually happens right before sunset on Shabbat. And interestingly enough, you know how Yeshua says, I am Lord of Shabbat, right? And I believe that you have him Lord of Shabbat because if you do the counting right to find the ascension, you will actually find that it always falls on a Friday evening. So he actually ascends later. This is after he's resurrected 40 days later. He actually ascends right before Shabbat on Friday, and he earlier had resurrected right before the end of Shabbat at the resurrection. So you have these bookends to that Shabbat, and he says, I'm Lord of Shabbat. It's his, right? Okay, so now that he's resurrected right here, this is like the happiest day of his life, right? This is so amazing. The work that he needed to do is completely done. Death couldn't hold him. Love conquered all idea. He got the keys from hell and Hades and death and everything from his work here. I mean, if you didn't have this resurrection, you wouldn't have first fruits. You have to have the resurrection in order to have first fruits. If you didn't have resurrection, then there's no point to any of it. Then it would say that none of this worked. If you didn't have the resurrection, Passover didn't work. All right, the blood didn't work because it wasn't perfect enough, but it was perfect enough and it worked. So here we come to the next day, and we see early in the morning that the ladies come to see him, but he says to Miriam, he's like, don't touch me yet, you know, because she wants to hug him. And when she sees him right here, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but he says, don't touch me yet. And he says that because he hasn't actually taken the first fruits to wave in front of Yehovah. So here you see you've got a change in priests, a change in priesthood, a change in wave offerings actually. Because here you have the Levitical priests are offering barley, okay? But Yeshua, who is of the Melchizedek priesthood, offers people. All right, that's the point of the whole thing. The point of the barley is just symbolic of the harvest that he's going to do of the world. So we can see very clearly that Yeshua fulfills the spring feast. And as in regards to first fruits, he fulfills first fruits by, number one, going to heaven, not just to the most holy place on earth, but actually to the most holy place. And he takes with him the wave offering. And he's not waving barley, he's waving people. So the first fruits harvest from the earth. And it actually is a promise of a final harvest. So this is a beautiful thing. You have the Aviv barley. Barley in the land of Israel is the first crop to become ripe. So they're going to use that first for making bread and food and stuff. But it is like a promise that everything's working properly, and there will be another harvest later on in the year of another kind of grain, wheat, which is a finer, lighter sort of wheat that takes longer to ripen. So here we see first fruits is the promise of a final harvest. Let's see, have I covered everything here that we need to do here? Because I got more to cover as far as first fruits. We're going to look at the hope embedded in here. But let's see, did I cover everything? We know that he ascended to Yehovah on first fruits to do the wave offering because he tells Miriam in the morning, don't touch me, I haven't been to my father yet. We know that he comes back in the evening, so he's seen back in the evening among the disciples, proving that he exists and that he's alive. So let's continue to look at this feast. It's amazing. I'm going to actually take off my hat because it's pretty difficult to teach with this hat on. I'm very super distracted, so I want to take my hat off. Alright, so that is so much better. Okay, so obviously the hat represented for me, it was symbolic of what I long for, which is hot weather, beautiful tropics, palm trees, white sand beaches, dolphins and aqua blue water, warm water to like play in, and someday we're going to talk about that. All right, because that represents some hope that I have, and first fruits is all about hope. So we're going to look and figure out who was it that he waved in front of Yehovah? Who were the first fruits? So we're going to look at that, okay? So who... Alright, so who were the first fruits that he waved on first fruits? First, let's look in the scriptures. Alright, so we are going to look in Revelation 14, 3-5. I'll go ahead and read it with you. let's see. Let's just go up and read the whole thing. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters, and like a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of a harpist playing their harps, and they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they kept themselves pure. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among men and offered as first fruits to Yehovah and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouth. They are blameless. So, okay. Did you see that? Did you see what it says right here? All right, it says they were purchased among men and offered as first fruits to Yehovah and the Lamb. First fruits. Okay, let's look at 1 Corinthians 15:23. We'll come back to this one here. So let's look at 1 Corinthians 15:20. We're going to start at verse 20. But Yeshua has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead comes also through a man. For as in Adam all die, so in Yeshua, or Messiah, all will be made alive, but each in his own turn. Messiah, the first fruits, then, when he comes, those who belong to him. All right, so I don't know if you saw that, but there's actually 3 categories there that are going to be resurrected. In this text. It shows us who's resurrected first, who's resurrected second, and who's resurrected third. Okay, so first resurrected is Messiah. Okay, so yeah, he was resurrected first. Then the second group resurrected after Messiah is first fruits. And then after the first fruits, the next time he comes, the rest of his people get to be resurrected. Okay, so you see very clearly here that you have 3 in order. You have Messiah first, then first fruits, and then what is second coming when he comes again, the rest of us. Okay, so this is amazing. Look at this. First fruits. So it's only feast illiterate person that doesn't catch this. If you are feast literate and you understand that there is a feast called first fruits or Yom HaBikurim in the Torah that we're supposed to be keeping and understand what that is about, you're going to clearly see that this is talking about the first fruits, the harvest that Yeshua did at his death and resurrection, that he waved in front of Papa on the day of first fruits. Okay, there had to be a first fruits offering. In the Levitical priesthood, the first fruits offering was barley. In the new Melchizedek priesthood, of which Yeshua is now the high priest over forever, he's going to have a different kind of offering because he's a different priest, and he's going to offer the point of it, people. So this is so awesome. So I just wanted to go back and just clarify again what happened on the timeline. So you see it's in Matthew 27:52. The tombs broke open and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Yeshua's resurrection, they went into the holy city. So you see that the tombs were marked, and then after his resurrection, they went into the holy city. So it was after the resurrection. So Yeshua first, and then the people that were raised with him right after him, okay? I cannot believe I just did that again. I just had the mic not into the phone. So I'm super sorry that the voice is different in that last little bit, but hopefully it's better now. I'm so sorry. Okay, so we can clearly see that there is this incredible reference in Revelation to the first fruits being who? Actually. So we actually see the reference that it is the 144,000 who are the first fruits. So any feast illiterate person is not going to see this. But if you are feast literate, then you're going to understand what this is talking about, because you're going to understand first fruits. And you're going to say, you're going to look at this and you're going to go, oh my, here's the first fruits. Duh. The first fruits from the earth are the first fruits that he raised from the dead when he raised from the dead, and that he took to Jehovah and waved in front of him. Duh, this is the first fruits, okay? You don't have a first fruits in the fall. The first fruits come at the beginning of the season, right? So this can't possibly be talking about people that are raised in the fall. That is the final harvest. This is talking about people that were raised in the spring. Okay, and it is clearly talking, as it says here, it was the 144,000. Now, how many of you have been super confused about who the 144,000 are? Oh yes, of course. Most of Christianity, all of Christianity is confused about this. They think it's this elite group of people, and not 144,000 plus one or 144,000 minus one, that you have to get into at the end of the age in order to get to the happily ever after. As if, it's almost like this is all there is that get into heaven. But this isn't true. This is talking about a specific group of people that were raised and offered as a first fruit offering to Yehovah. Duh, that is the offering that Yeshua gave at first fruit. Okay, so now let's do this. So now that we've established that the first fruit offering was 144,000 people that he raised, let's figure out who these 144,000 actually are. Okay, so I hope you can see that. It's a little hard with the glare right there, but let's look and see what the characteristics are of this group of people. So in Revelation 14, we can see the characteristics, at least some of them. Let's see, it says they sang a new song. So it says that no one else could learn the song except for the 144,000. So they are a very special group of people that no one else can understand what they've gone through. Okay, these are those who did not have relations with women. Okay, so we know there that they are males. And they didn't have relations with women, so they actually were virgins, for they kept themselves pure, so they're virgins. And then they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They follow the Lamb. What does that sound like? Follow the Lamb. All right, and they were purchased among men, offered as first fruits. No lie was found in their mouths. They were blameless. Okay, so no lie was found in their mouth. They were blameless or innocent. Okay, all right, so you tracking with me here? They sang a new song. They're a special group. No one else can understand what they went through. They're a special group. They were males. They're virgins, so they never had relationships with women. They follow the Lamb wherever they go, wherever he goes. So they're like little children that follow the Lamb. They are innocent. Okay, so do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? The 144,000 are innocent males, children. Yes. Did you get it? You see? All right, so what happened at both the birth of the deliverers? Okay, so Yehovah provides a deliverer for Israel, Moses. What happens at Moses' birth, basically? The slaughter, right? Pharaoh commanded the slaughter of all baby boys under the age of 2. Remember that? And then you have at Yeshua's birth, what happened at Yeshua's birth? The final deliverer, the deliverer that, that Moses is a shadow picture of, Yeshua. And what happened at Yeshua's birth? Yeah, at Yeshua's birth, King Herod tried to murder all the baby boys under 2 years old as well. So clearly what I'm seeing is 144,000 are the baby boys that got murdered at the time of Moses and at the time of Yeshua in Bethlehem. Give you chills or not? This is amazing. I mean, just look at this. And the fact that the generosity, it shows this beautiful generosity of Yehovah and Yeshua to raise so many. I think I grew up believing, okay, there's only a few that he raised, No, he raised 144,000 as the first fruit wave offering. And those are from the 2 times that there was this horrible destruction done to the babies and the infants, the male baby infants at the time of when Yeshua was born and when Moses was born. This happened to Israel. This wasn't like the world and how the pagans sacrificed their babies. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the sacrifice of Israel's babies on behalf of, trying to get rid of the deliverer. All right. So I love how my friend Joel and Karen, who revealed this to us, I was in shock. I was in shock when they pulled this out and they looked at the qualifications for the 144,000 as the first fruits. I was in shock. I was crying and I was jumping around. I couldn't believe my ears. I thought this was so gold. This is like a beautiful gold nugget here in the Feast of First Fruits to find. And I like how my friend Joel said, as he's looking at me across the table, he goes, it's like Yeshua got to say to these babies, later on when he resurrects them, he got to say, they weren't after you. They were after me, not you. It gave me chills because we're talking about restoration here. And the first Feast of First Fruits is all about restoration. And Yehovah wants to restore everything through his son. And one of the first act as high priest that Yeshua does is to resurrect the ones that were murdered as he was coming in to play his role. Herod was trying to get rid of him, not the other ones. And Pharaoh was just an evil, wicked man that wanted to have population control. But it happened to the people of Israel, the people of Yehovah. And so this is beautiful. I hope you see what I see, and I hope it gives you chills like it does me. But in this, we're going to see now, we're going to actually look here for a moment at the hope that's revealed in here. Okay, so the hope of first fruits is that there's going to be a final harvest. That's the basic hope of first fruits, is that it is the first part of the harvest. It is not the full thing. And the full harvest is coming in the fall. It's like a guarantee. So the first fruits harvest is almost like a guarantee that the fall harvest is actually going to happen. So one of the neatest things I think about this is that for so long we live with unrealized hope. Okay, and that can be really heavy on the heart. It can make the body sick and the brain sick. And you know how the scripture says, it's not good to have hope, dangling out there, but never actually getting it. First fruits shows us it already happened. Hope was realized for these people. And another thing about these people, who's to say that he didn't raise them as full-fledged male adults? Because it says that they went out into the world, basically, and spoke to people. So this was the first time in history that hope, this kind of hope, was actually realized. And for believers, this is super important to really get your brain around and to realize that we have eyewitnesses to the resurrection of Yeshua, that he was resurrected, eyewitnesses in the Brit Hadashah, or the New Testament. And we have eyewitnesses that these people were resurrected with Yeshua and that they went around and spoke. So hope actually realized. How wonderful, and that should give us even more hope as we look towards the fall, when we will realize the same hope. So first fruits actually reveals to us why we're doing what we're doing, why we are enduring, why we are obeying, at all costs, why we are giving him our all. First fruits tells us why. We see the reward in first fruits. Hope. I'm going to read just a little bit from my book here. Hope, the hope of first fruits. This is what I call, I call this the feast of hope, basically. Hope is essential to our well-being. Hope is to the soul like breath is to the body. First fruits is all about hope. It is so cool that Papa Yah's feast cycle includes a day set aside every year to show us what we are to hope for. What will be? What are we working for? This is the time of year that Yehovah wants to talk to us about the hope and the reason that you're obeying and that you're losing things, why you're staying faithful and enduring persecution, okay? Believers are supposed to live with a deep hope that defies understanding. Honestly, hope is actually the point. Realized hope is the point of the entire story. What we see in first fruits is the point of the whole entire story. But most believers live with very, very little hope. Hasatan has stolen it, which makes that even harder. So I believe that we actually have a crisis of hope. I really believe that hope is like the first thing to come under attack. Hope is what's going to get you all the way to the end, but hope is what comes under attack. And I believe that believers really lack knowing what true hope is. For one, they don't understand the Feast of First Fruits. And I think if they understood the Feast of First Fruits, they would really find their hope. And that's what I'm here for today, is to try to help to unpack this festival or this feast so that you can find the hope that your heart desires and your heart longs for and that you need to keep going. And I believe that the crisis of hope is actually found, the heart of that is found in this people not really being sure about the heart of Yehovah towards them. So I think we have a crisis of hope because we don't know him, because we don't know his good heart towards us, and we don't sit with that. We don't dream into it. We use our imaginations. We think the scripture says one thing and it's actually saying a complete other thing. And we also buy the lies of Hasatan that it can't possibly be as good as our heart wants it to be, because it can't possibly be that way. But I want to say, who can dream better dreams, me or him? Okay, so if I can dream this much, then he's going to have this much of a dream for me, right? So he's going to get me here, and then he's going to take me even beyond. But I feel like there's a lot of believers who are okay? And they're not prepping the right thing. They're not prepping their heart to meet the King, but they're prepping, their food storage, their, ammo storage. They're prepping in other ways, which is kind of bizarre to me, because they're prepping to save themselves, but they don't really know what they want on the other side. What are they wanting to save themselves for? What kind of life do they want later? Do they just want to exist as they are right now? What do they hope for? So all these preppers who are trying to preserve life, and they're trying to basically rescue and save themselves. Not saying some of that's not good, and don't get me wrong there, but the focus of it isn't in prepping the soul and the heart to meet Yehovah, but prepping here so that you can continue to live. But I want to ask, live for what? And if you're prepping to survive, and you have this mentality in your head that what's coming, or what the reward is coming, is something that you are completely unfamiliar with, where's the hope in that? If we're going to be like angels, I don't want to be like an angel. I want to be like a human. I want to be the best Rebekah that Papa had in mind. I don't want to be something that I'm not. I want to be restored to what I originally was intended to be. How 1 Peter 3:15 says, be ready to give an answer for people who come up to you and say, tell me about the hope that lies within you. Okay, number one, who has that kind of hope that you see and you go, man, I want that. That's the kind of hope that's going to get me through this world, through this life here, this hard, very brutal life. The only thing that can get you through that is hope and knowing what the reward is. But if your reward is something like sitting on a cloud playing a harp or the best church service in the sky, that's no hope. No, hope is a restoration of what was originally intended. So we need to go back and look at what that was intended, to know what to offer our hearts as far as hope goes. All right, so I want to read you a page in my book here. It says the whole point of first fruits is to give us hope that there will be a future fall harvest. First fruits shows us what that will be like. It's like a guarantee of what will happen to us at Yah's final harvest of the earth. It's a fallen world that we wake up to every single day. Every morning it hits us again that we have lost paradise. Life in a fallen world is hard on everyone and all creation. We get on the very narrow path of the Melchizedek priesthood, and then we add loneliness and division and isolation and being exiled onto everything else that we endure. At this point, it would be really good to know what our hope actually is. We can know what we hope for because we have first fruits. Yeshua rose from the dead, then he resurrected with him 144,000 as a promise of the final coming harvest. They are restored humans. They are not something weird like just a spirit floating around or something new. They are new in quality people. They have new hardware for their software. It will be the same for us. This is the good news, people. We get the life that we always knew we were created for, in the place we always knew we belonged, in paradise. So what does immortality actually look like on a human being? Well, first fruits actually shows us what this looks like. First fruits tells us that the point of the story, the climax, is restoration, not annihilation. All right, this is what John Eldridge says, that, it's restoration, not annihilation. So restoration of the human being, not annihilation of the human being, and creating something completely different. But how? Okay, so how does first fruits actually show us what immortality looks like on a human being? Well, you look at Yeshua, and let's explore that. Let's look and see what he's like after he resurrects. Okay, so what is Yeshua like after he resurrects? Well, first thing, let's look at Miriam. So he appears to Miriam first. He doesn't appear to anyone else at the very beginning. It's just her, which is super awesome. That he appears to a woman first and her. But what is she's having this conversation with him. She doesn't recognize him. Okay, so she thinks he's the gardener. She doesn't recognize him. And perhaps it's because she's crying and stuff, but she doesn't recognize him. And that means that he had a new body, okay? But also note that she wasn't freaked out. It wasn't like he was an alien or anything. He was flesh and blood and human. Otherwise, she would have been freaked out and running away, right? So we know that she recognizes him as a human being. So he's flesh and blood and he's human being. But he has this new body. So obviously we get a new body, right? But we're going to stay flesh and blood and we're going to stay human. Okay, so because remember, what happens to Yeshua happens to us. He's the first one. And all of us are are going to be perfected into his image. And all of us are going to be following the same path, right? And something that's so amazing to me is like, we're going to get what he got here. But then also, Yeshua said that that he wants us to sit and rule with him. So we actually are going to sit on the throne on the right hand side of Yehovah with him, ruling. Whoa. So this is like he's the pattern by which everything is going to happen. Everything that's good, the hope that's coming, he's the pattern by this. Okay, let's keep going. So what else happens? She recognizes his voice, though, remember? So she recognizes his voice. So the voice may stay the same, but the voice is familiar. Okay, so the voice is, so we see here that he's talking. All right, also there might be something there that you see that I'm not seeing, but let's skip forward to, he goes to heaven, he does his wave offering, he comes back to earth late in the afternoon on first fruits, and what does he do? He actually meets up with some disciples that are walking to Emmaus, right? The road to Emmaus. And what happens there? So he's again talking, he's walking, right? So he talks and he walks, and he reveals the scriptures, right? And their hearts are burning within them, remember? So he has a memory. And I like how he's playful with them, because you remember how he pretends to go on his way, and then they're going this way and they invite him to go this way. And so he's pretending, and remember how he's like, they're saying, you know, hey, you don't know what's going on. It has been going on in Jerusalem the last few days. And he's like, no, tell me what has gone on. So he's playful. But then also remember, these two Emmaus guys knew him, but they didn't recognize him. So again, you have that new body idea that he actually, it says that he came in another form, which is interesting. So perhaps he was still human, otherwise they'd have been freaked out, right? And they're not going to sit there and talk to an animal or an alien or anything. So obviously he was still human, flesh and blood, but he came in a different body, which is super different form. How cool is that? I don't know what, I haven't looked at the Hebrew on that, so it would be interesting to know what that meant. So then you see him at dinner with these guys, these disciples on the road to Emmaus, those two, and you see, what do you see? He breaks the bread, and then they recognize him, right? So he has the same mannerisms. So he has the same mannerisms. And I encourage you to go read this for yourself and look and see what the resurrected Yeshua actually does and looks like. But if you notice, he actually disappears. He totally disappears. So maybe we'll have the capability of disappearing. Remember, he shows up to the disciples again, and he's like, they think he's a ghost, right? And he wants to make it very clear he is not a ghost, right? So he says, give me something to eat, give me honeycomb, give me the fish. So they had boiled fish and honeycomb that he ate, and probably some matzah as well, because it's still the feast of unleavened bread. So he eats. So as we see here that he is making a huge point that he is not a ghost, that kind of blows the whole idea that you're going to be spirit floating around out of the water. I mean, most Christians believe that you're going to go up and you're going to float around or whatnot. That is so not true. Our Rabbi Yeshua, who the resurrected Messiah, is not a ghost. He's making it very clear he is not the spirit. He is a man. He's a flesh and blood. Okay. Remember, he says, touch me, put your fingers in me, that sort of thing, and see that I'm saying. But here he keeps the scars. And he keeps his memory, which is interesting. When I grew up, something I was taught in my religion was that your memory was going to be completely wiped away, so you wouldn't remember any of the horrific things that happened here. Well, my take on that is, you see here that Yeshua actually has scars from what he went through here and memory of it. And when we need to, he probably got counseling from, not just counseling, he probably got face-to-face time with Yahovah that day, who in the flesh vindicates him. And there's going to be so much healing in that for us when we see Papa, and he's going to be, in the flesh with us, and he's going to be vindicating our life. He's going to be telling our story better than anyone else could, really making sense of everything. He's not going to be wiping our minds away. If he did, sin could come back again. You'd be like, they're like my friend said last night. He's like, oh yeah, hey, the apple, cool. No, we don't want this to happen again, right? We want to remember what happened and not have it happen again, because free will will continue to exist. So we want to make sure that it never ever happens again. So scars and remembering. So we see in Yeshua, the resurrected Yeshua, that some of his characteristics remain. Some people recognized him and how his mannerisms, his personality, his heart. So those things remain and made it put in that software being put into a new hardware, into a new body. So another cool thing, as you look at the story of the risen Messiah and what he looks like in immortality, remember he's on the beach later and days later, and he's made a fire, and he's going to appear to the fishermen, and he's cooking fish. So he's obviously creating. Still, he's creating a fire. He's still using tangible things, and he's eating, and he's fished, and he's found a fish, and he's got it over a fire, and he's again somewhat playful with the disciples. There you go. Okay, so basically we can see here, and I think you could probably find a whole lot more things than I'm finding right here, but as we can see, what lies ahead of us, what is something that we get to look forward to, the hope of first fruits, is that we get what he has. Okay, we get the new body. We're going to have the same voice. We're going to have our same character in our heart, but we're going to be able to, maybe disappear. We're going to be able to control this body differently than we do right now. We're going to still be flesh and blood, but we'll be traveling back and forth to heaven like he did. He got to see, another thing is that he got to see Yehovah face to face that day, something that I look forward to so much, and a part of the restoration. So remember, it's restoration, not annihilation. Okay, so I know that there are a lot of verses in the scriptures that talk about the restoration, but I'm just going to point out two in particular that I think you'll find interesting. The first one is Acts 3:19, and we'll keep going there a little bit. It says, "Repent then, Teshuvah, and turn to Yehovah." So you're repenting. You're turning from paganism to turning towards Yehovah, so that your sins may be wiped out, that times of refreshing may come from Yehovah, and that he may send the Messiah, who has been appointed for you, even Yeshua. He must remain in heaven until the time comes for Yehovah to restore everything, as he promised long ago through his holy prophets. For Moses said, "Yehovah your Elohim will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own people. You must listen to everything he tells you," like Shema and obey. Anyone who does not listen to him will be completely cut off from among his people. So in that scripture there in Acts, we see he says, restore everything. All right. And I want to just point out that is actually the word apostasia, which means to put something back into its original condition. Right? So when he says he's going to restore everything, he's going to put everything back into what it was originally intended to be. So when we look at first fruits, we can see that Yeshua was actually put back into the original condition that he had prior. It's interesting that in his Last Supper, the prayer he prays for his disciples as they're going towards the garden, or they're in the garden at that time, I think, and he prays for his disciples. One of the things that he says in there is that he is looking forward to and asks for Yehovah to basically restore him to his former glory before the world began, before creation began, when Yehovah and him were prior. So I find that really stunning, is that he knows that he was had all this glory. He was different prior to creation, and he's asking how about to restore him to that. And so we see him after his resurrection and in his former state, basically. Isn't that cool? So we can see what he looked like prior to creation. 1 Corinthians 15, we're going to start at 45, right before 45. Okay, it says, if there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam, a life-giving spirit. The spiritual did not come first, but the natural, and after that, the spiritual. Okay, so we had the natural plus the spiritual. The first man was of the dust of the earth, the second man from heaven. As was the earthly man, so are those who are of the earth, and as is the man from heaven, so also are those who are of heaven. And just as we have borne the likeness of the earthly man, so we bear the likeness of the man from heaven. So you see, we're going to bear the likeness of, the first Adam, in that made from the dust, but we're also going to bear the image of the second Adam, who's from heaven, Yeshua HaMashiach, right? And we see what he's like right here after his resurrection. I declare to you, brothers, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Yehovah, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. But listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will be changed in a flash, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For the perishable must clothe itself with imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. When the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. All right, isn't that awesome? So the idea that, there's some things that have to happen. We're going to get this immortal. We're going to take this mortal body is going to become immortal, like Yeshua's. I like that, in the twinkling of an eye. And for me, that reminds me a lot of I dream of the moment of Cinderella when she's like with the twirly, with all the twinkles around her, and it takes her from what she was into something much, much better. I want that so bad. So let's look in Romans 8. And we're going to start at verse 18. It says, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. The creation waits in eager expectation for the sons of Yehovah to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, Hasatan, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of the children of Yehovah. So here we can see clearly that that creation and mankind are going to kind of be restored at the same time, and all creation groans until the sons of man are revealed, until the righteous are revealed. Okay, then we have another verse here, Matthew 19:28. Let's see, where is it here? Yeshua said to them, I tell you the truth, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So the words that Yeshua uses, the renewal of all things, actually is the word palingenesia. I believe that's how you say it. And it actually means Genesis again. Yes, he's talking about the earth. So Yeshua is saying at the renewal of all things, when life goes back to Genesis, when we get to do Genesis again, we get paradise restored, is what he's talking about. So part of the hope of first fruits is hearing Yeshua say this. So we've looked at what immortality looks like on Yeshua, and now we see that he says it's going to go back. The restoration of all things is going to go back to what my Father and I intended for creation back in Genesis. So what exactly was Genesis like? I think we can find a lot of hope here if we look real carefully at what is going on in Genesis prior to the fall, because that's what he's restoring everything to. He's not going to make new things. He's going to make all things new. So he's going to restore what the original intent was, remember? So let's look at actually what was prior to the fall, because that is restoration. That's the renewal of all things. That's what's going to happen to us. And so we can find our hope in knowing what that looks like. So let's go back and look at Genesis. One thing in there we see is that there's extreme beauty. Nature and man are working together. There's animals and man that aren't afraid of each other. You have marriage as a central feature there. It's almost the climax of the whole creation there. It's this echadness between Adam and the Ezer Kenegdo, his woman. You see Yehovah having this face-to-face interaction with his creation. He comes down, he walks in the garden in the cool of the day with Adam and Hava. So you can also see that Yehovah gave Adam and Hava, the first humans, a job to do. They were supposed to tend the garden. Yes, they weren't just going to sit on their hands and watch TV all day. They actually had a job to do, so they were being productive and creative. So I want you to take away from this today that the possibilities for happiness and joy are completely unlimited, because Yehovah Elohim is love and he is limitless, and he wants to give good gifts to his children, and this is going to be the climax of what he's going to give us, is face to face with him and a restoration of all things, restoration of what his original intent was. All right, so what is it actually that you hope for? What kind of hope do you actually live with? I live with a lot of hope. The only reason that I've been able to go through everything I've been through and still be breathing on the other side is because I don't give up the hope. I know that it's coming, and what is coming is so much better than what anything this world can offer me. So I'm holding on to that with everything that I've got. I have a little story for you. When we moved to the teepee, we had two prior to moving to the teepee, we had two big dogs. We had a Malamute Shepherd and an Akita Husky. And the Malamute Shepherd was getting old, 16 years old. And as we're losing everything, here we're losing, our home, our business. And Yehovah is moving us out into the woods, and our older dog gets sick, and at 16 begins to die prior to us going out to the mountains. But Katie May was a little bit younger. She's 13 years old, but she was a Akita Husky, and we were super excited, super glad to have one dog at least been going up to the woods with us. Well, we get up there. She's like 70, 80 pounds, big dog, get up to the teepee. And in January is when we moved in, and it was super icy that week. It was super cold, 16 below, and super icy, like I said. And she actually was down on the road and slipped and fell and basically broke her back. And here we're trying to survive in this teepee in the cold with little girls, and we have a big dog now that needs to be lifted out of her bed and taken outside at 2 o'clock in the morning so she can go potty, and then we had to hand feed her. And it was so overwhelming to me in the sense I was losing my second dog, and it was just heartbreaking.
Here, can I do it? I know how to do it. Hey, Daddy. When I was as a Cohen, I used to feed Nate like a baby. Here, can I try? Can I try?
It's been a week.
You want to do one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's been a whole week.
There you go.
Good girl, Katie.
Kitty. Good girl.
And we had been through so much loss, and here we were having to endure another huge loss on the heels of this being moved to the woods. By the end of the week, we finally had to put her down. As I was grieving the loss of my animals and the loss of everything, one day I was at the teepee that winter time, and we had probably 6 feet of snow. It was crazy that year. And in my mind's eye, I was kind of communing with Papa, and in my mind's eye, I kind of had a little vision. And my vision was like, I heard and I saw something that was so full of hope for me. I know that he gave it to me, this vision. So I saw this man coming up the walk, and so handsome. Oh, he was coming up the driveway through the woods, so I could kind of see him through the trees. And he was coming up, and he was so handsome. And I was like, who is that? I haven't seen him before, And all of a sudden I heard him yelling, Katie, Nate. And he was yelling for my dogs. I was like, I recognize it. Wait a minute, those are my dogs he's calling for. And all of a sudden, out of the woods, here comes bounding Katie and Nate. And as he's coming up the driveway, I see summer coming behind him. He's getting rid of the winter, and he's bringing back life. And here are these dogs. He's giving me back my dogs, and I realized it's Yeshua. And the word picture was the restoration of all things. He was bringing back Eden, bringing back Genesis. And he was restoring to me what Hasatan had stolen. My dogs with death. That's a Hasatan thing. You can't tell me that's a cycle of life. You can't tell me that's the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to live forever. We're created to live forever, and so are the animals. So I love that picture that he gave me. One thing in that picture that I think is so cool is it wasn't necessarily so much about my joy in receiving the good thing from him, but I really saw his joy with being able to restore to me something that I had once loved that had been ripped from me. And the joy that he's gonna get to bring back to us everything that Hasatan has stolen, he's gonna get to give back to us 100-fold. I mean, woo, mind blown, right? And I don't want to steal that joy from him. If I'm made in his image, I love to give good gifts. I love to give things to people and see their reaction, right? I mean, whoa, how much incredible joy is the Messiah going to get to be able to give back to his people, everything that was taken. And to see it's like a move that bus moment, with Ty Pennington and that Extreme Home Makeover, move that bus, and then, whoa, oh, what kind of joy is that? That's going to be amazing. All right, so just quickly, I wanted to just challenge you here to write down what you hope for. All right, I live with a lot of hope, and I feel like this is all about first fruits. First fruits is all about hope, so it's really important for you to, get a grip on what it is you hope for, and really sit with that on this day, to look at what immortality looks like, and then to really dig into your heart and say, what is that going to take me to? What do I hope for? What is getting me through this life right now? What am I surviving for? All right, to be an angel in heaven? No, I don't want to be an angel. I want to be a human being. I want to be the best Rebekah I can be, right? So in case you forgot, which I bet you have, I am going to tell you what you hope for, okay? So get a piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to tell you what you hope for. What is it that you hope for? I'm going to tell you because I bet you forgot. Here we go. You hope to live in an inspiring and beautiful world with consistently perfect climate that wants you to thrive in it. Oh, yes. All right, second thing you hope for. You hope to experience and produce all the children that your heart desires. Yes. And if some here didn't work out, you make new ones, right? You hope to have a forever young and pain-free, perfect and beautiful body that matches your heart. Isaac wants to be big and tall, and I want to be, thinner and just, more athletic. Anyway, I want to be able to do all kinds of things. I want my body to be able to do things that it can't do right now. You hope to have adventures without restriction of money, time, resources, government control, or private property signs, right? Yeah, it's like, no, there's a waterfall that I want to go see that's on the other side of that private property line, and I can't go see it, and that's not right. Well, in the kingdom to come, there isn't going to be anything like that, because it's not going to work like that. When the king comes back, he's going to own the whole thing, and he's going to place stewards in charge of different places on his land, on his world, right? So we're not going to own we're not going to own property here, I don't think. When you have ownership, then it changes things. It's not good. It's all his, and we are going to be stewards, okay? You hope to be married to your other half and feel whole, loved, and ahead every day of your life. Yeah, who doesn't want that? This is life as it was meant to be, my friends. All right, you hope to work and eat from a grateful earth and not have to have it work against you. Oh, yes. These are things that you long for. I think that you hope to have your own home and a place where you belong. So you will have your own home for sure. You just won't own it in the way that we own it here. It'll be totally different in that sense, and it'll be good though. You'll have your own home, and it won't be like, you can lose it because you don't pay the mortgage payment. All that's going to go away. I think that you hope to have unlimited time to do whatever it is that you're doing. So you have time. There's no time restriction. You could spend 8,000 years, learning to figure skate and just keep on going. It's like a drop in the bucket. It's like nothing. You could lay on the beach for 200 years. I know it wouldn't work like that, but you know what I'm saying? It's like time you're never going to end. So you have time to do things. All right, and then I think that you hope to have face-to-face relationship with the family of Elohim. And I think that you hope to have your animal friends resurrected and given back to you. And then I think you hope to feel 100% safe and free to live in a world with absolutely no evil. So you are going to feel 100% safe when you walk out your house in the middle of the night. You could go out and you go camping and you just you're not afraid at all because you're 100% safe. I believe that you hope for vindication. I believe that you hope for the plenty, to be around just a plenty. You're not going to go in and see small little bags of spices. You're going to see big old honking, heaps of spices. You're not going to see one apple with a label on it that you buy, a barcode. You're going to see like a whole tree full of apples. It's dripping off the tree. I think you hope to be free from the 9-to-5 slavery of the work world. Absolutely. Yeah, because basically we're slaves, right? Anybody who works for someone else is a slave. You get up, you make your lunch, you get dressed to go to work, you work a 9 to 5, whatever it is. You come back home, you maybe get a little bit of rest, and then you go to bed and you start the whole thing over. That's slavery, people. That is slavery. Unless that's what you want. But that's slavery because you're doing it in order to pay the mortgage. You're doing it in order to buy food. That's slavery. And so you want freedom from that. You want the hope that isn't going to be forever. You hope to have Yehovah tell your story correctly. I think this is cool. Is that, I can't wait for the counseling sessions that we're going to get. Someday, Yehovah's going to sit us down and one by one and give us counseling sessions and tell our story correctly to us and to the world. So we'll be vindicated, but we're also going to hear it. Like, I feel so fragmented sometimes when it comes to my own story. Like, I feel like I've lived 13 lives and I don't know if they like meld together or I don't know. Like, and when I go to tell somebody part of my story, it's like this story here, but all this stuff back here affects this, and it just I don't feel like I do it justice, and I feel like Yehovah will. And then I think you also hope to explore the universe, to explore all the other worlds and things that Yehovah created. And I think that you hope for unity, like true unity, true family unity, true unity in the Messiah. It'll be nothing like what we have now. And I think that you hope for no restrictions between people, that you'll be able to like go see your friend in Australia. Yeah, Ali, like that. Like no questions asked, no need for a ticket, no need for like a ton of time or have it wear on your body trying to get over there and that sort of thing, or where do you stay when you get over there spending a ton of money. It won't be like that at all. I hope for that too. Okay, so I hope that you have made a list of the things that you hope for. One of the things that we like to do on the Feast of First Fruits is we have a book of hope, actually, where we have cut out magazine pictures or Pinterest, printed things from Pinterest, and we have a book of hope that says, what does our heart hope for? So that we can look at that and go, oh yeah, I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. So that's a really cool tradition to do during First Fruits. So I hope that I really drove home what the heart of First Fruits is about. It's about hope. Okay, so now that I did that, let's just move forward for a few minutes on what some other things First Fruits is about and what Yehovah asks us to do. Okay, one of the things that we're supposed to do is take a wave offering. We're supposed to wave him in front of him some first fruits, right? So we're not in the land of Israel. We don't have the temple. We're just not needed. The barley, I get flowers in my yard, or at this time of year I don't have very much. Sometimes there's morels, but I look at it as a tradition to do, just to practice and to say, okay, Papa, you said this, I'm going to do it anyway, even though I don't understand it completely. But Shavuot and first fruits are the ones that you wave your harvest before you actually eat of them. So one of the things to do is to say the Armenian prayer when you do that. So you're going to come to him, you're going to bring words. It says, this is in Deuteronomy 26, 1 through 11. So, and you're going to actually bring words when you return to him, and you're going to say this prayer and lay down your offering. Another thing to remember here is that Yehovah says, do not show up to my feast empty-handed. And so you want to bring a first fruit offering that is, equal to how he has blessed you. And that's personal. It's definitely not a tithe. It's an offering, okay? Something that we do on First Fruits is, with our first fruit offering, is we actually think back over the year and go, who has fed us? Who has shown us light? And then let's feed them back. Let's give back to them. So we nail who we want to give it to. We nail how much we want to give. And then we write a card. And then tomorrow or later this week, I will go get the money, arrange it, and then send it in the mail to them. So on First Fruits, we also look at the fruit of our lips, because fruit of our lips is so much more important to Papa than whether we pick some flowers out of the ground and wave them in front of him. He's more concerned about the condition of our hearts, remember? We also look at the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians. So fruit of our lips, Hosea 14:2. Fruit of the Spirit would be Galatians 5:17 through 18. Let's look. Here's my list. I want you to write these things down, and then you can study them later on first fruits next year or this year, whenever you watch this video. But what is the fruit of our lips? So the fruit of our lips, Matthew 7:15 to 20 says, by their fruit you will know. Remember? By their fruit you will know. So if you don't know where somebody's coming from, in which kingdom, just look at the fruit of them, and then you'll know. Saying the name is a fruit of the lips. Hebrews 13:15 and 16. Fruit is repentance. Matthew 3:8. Fruit of right doings, so fruit of righteousness, a fruit of doing things the right way according to Jehovah, which Philippians 1:9 through 11, Colossians 1:10. We are raised to life to bear fruit, says Romans 7:4 to 6. Kingdom people produce much fruit, Matthew 21:43. Israel will fill the world with fruit, Isaiah 27:6. And I don't think he's talking about, pears and peaches and stuff. He's talking about fruit, kingdom fruit, okay? Truth. A tree with no fruit is cut down, Matthew 3:10. Be careful. You want to make sure that you're a tree, and it's bearing good fruit. Otherwise, you will be cut down. There's good trees and there's bad trees in Matthew 12:33 to 37. The vine, the branches, and the fruit is talked about in John 15:1 to 7. Those without fruit are rejected in Jude 12. There's fruit of light, Ephesians 5:9. And then the first fruits of the Ruach HaKodesh, Romans 8:23. So then let's look at the fruits of the Spirit for a minute. In Galatians 5, you see love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Wow, that's quite a list right there. But those are fruits that Papa is more interested in than if you go harvest morels and wave them in front of him. All right, so one other tradition that my family has that we do all the time is we eat the meal, the same kind of meal that Yeshua ate when he went and he met with his disciples that evening. So when he was trying to say, I'm not a ghost, give me some of that food, he asked for, there's boiled fish and honeycomb, and there's probably matzah because it was still the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So I get honeycomb somewhere around August or October, something like that, whenever the beekeeper has honeycomb available at the end of the year. I can't get it at this time of year, but I can get it into the fall, so I have it stashed away for first fruits. But we eat honeycomb and we eat a boiled fish. So Isaac makes this amazing Moroccan fish that is boiled on top of a bed of cilantro and peppers and garlic, and then he makes this wonderful sauce to put over his glaze, and then we eat that with maybe couscous and some unleavened bread on the night that he did that with his disciples. So that's one of our traditions for first fruits. So, and then finally, just quickly, first fruits kicks off the counting of the Omer to Shavuot. And remember, there are two ways that the scriptures tells us to find Shavuot. You're supposed to count 50 days from first fruits. All right, and then you're also supposed to count 7 weeks, 7 Shabbats, and then plus 1 day. They're both going to bring you to a Sunday. Shavuot is always on a Sunday, and we'll talk about that in the Shavuot video, but it's always on a Sunday because of where it starts, where the counting starts, and because of those two methods, like two witnesses to finding Shavuot, but they start on first fruits. Also, you can find the Ascension, which go watch my Ascension video. You find the Ascension by starting to count the day after first fruits, and that will always bring you to a Friday of when he ascended, because he is Lord of Shabbat. So if you want, I do have a really nice poster that I created on Rebekah Co. Where you can cut out these little Omer jars and stick them on to keep the counting going in your home. We tape it to our wall, and then Hadassah likes to every day. She gets up and she counts the Omer by cutting out the little picture and gluing it onto the day, and then pretty soon we know where we are. Also, something fun we do during counting of the Omer is we make a layered cake for the Shabbat that we're on. So if it's the first Shabbat, first week, like this Friday will be the first Shabbat, it's a 1-layered cake. The next week will be a 2-layered cake. The next week a 3-layered cake, and so on until you get a 7-layered cake, which that will happen on the very last week, right before Shavuot. And so you have a 7-layer cake plus 1 day equals Shavuot. And the girls like that because then they know kind of where they are in the counting by how many layers of cake that they got last Erev Shabbat. So that is a fun tradition. Yay! So I'm done. I'm exhausted. This was a lot of work to do this today, but I'm so glad that I finally got it done. I love the Feast of First Fruits. It is full of hope. I think it is the Feast of Hope because it shows us what is coming. It shows us what our reward is, because we can look at Yeshua and see what the reward is for him. We get what he got for our faithfulness. Now remember, in Revelation it says the only way that you're going to get access to the tree of life so that you can have this reward is to obey the commandments. All right, so study the feast, look at Shavuot. It talks about the covenant and the commandments that you need to keep in order to get there and to have access to that tree of life so that you can have all the hopes and dreams that you have inside of you. They will all come true. Why would you want to give that up? There's nothing here that could possibly compare with what's coming later. So be faithful, people. Be faithful, Israel, so that you can have the happily ever after. And so that Yehovah and Yeshua and the Rock can have their hearts filled with joy that you are there, that you accepted their offer and their gift, and that you did what they needed you to do in order for you to get there and fulfill their joy, make their joy complete, and make your own joy complete, and those that love you that are there as well. So there you go, Israel, the Feast of First Fruits. Amazing feast. Absolutely amazing feast. I love this feast. All right, shalom, and check the description for links and for going to Rebekah Co. to purchase the different things that I've mentioned here. Just remember that First Fruits is all about hope. And remember that the resurrection that happened at the very beginning, end of Shabbat and the very beginning of First Fruits, was so crucial, because if that hadn't happened, First Fruits and the reward wouldn't even be possible. We would be toast.